Gimel Amud Beis, and we're at Omer of Chisda.
Rav Chisda said.
Omer of Chisda, about halfway down the page.
Rav Chisda, there we go.
Okay, Omer of Chisda, Shloishin Amanim la'alter. There were three people that are believed immediately, and sort of after the immediate, they're no longer believed. Elohein, these are the examples. Asufi, Chaya, Upateras, Kabrusa. Okay, we'll explain each one. Asufi Hadamar. Asufi is what we explained before. If his parents sort of identify him as he's being picked up, so then he's no longer an Asufi. Then we know who his parents are. We trust his parents. But if he's already been picked up, then we don't believe his parents anymore. Now he has the chazaka of sort of being abandoned on the street.
See, sometimes they were left on the street and the parents would tell somebody that this
So,
is mine.
yeah.
Interesting.
Okay. Okay, Chaya, a midwife, the Tanya we learned, Chaya Nemenes Lemer Zayat Sarishin Vizayat Sashani. A midwife is believed to identify which of the twins is oldest. The Medvarim were, when is this true? Shal Yatsa V'Chazra, Yatsa V'Chazra Ein Nemenes. This is only true if the child sort of child was born completely, the child came out partially and then came back in, then she is not believed.
You cannot leave the room.
I'm sorry. Right. It's if she left the room, and she came back, then she's not believed. Rabbi Eliezer says, "Huchsiko al aimda nemenes." If she's in the same place, then she's believed. If not, she's not believed. In other words, she's on the birthing stool, helping the child, helping the mother deliver. My benai, what's the difference of opinion? It could be the difference of opinion is if she turns around and she's not looking. According to the opinion that says that it's only while she's looking. So as soon as she turns away, she's not believed anymore to say which child is the older one. But if she's still there, but according to the other opinion, even if she's not looking, she's just on the birthing stool, she's helping the mother deliver, then she's believed. And then soon afterwards, she's no longer believed. Pateras Chavrusal, a woman who exempts her friend. What does that mean? The Tanya Mahi. What is this referring to? The time we learned. There were three women that were sleeping together. That were sleeping on the same beds. And we find blood on the bed. We don't know which woman is menstruant, which woman is anida. Kulam tmeis. They're all tummy. But let's say one of them checked herself and found herself to be staining or having a period. So he tmeya, so she's tamei v'kulam toharis, and the rest of them are all tar. It's Amar of Chizr. Of Chizr says what does this mean that she sort of checked herself? Shabbat ga'atzma kashir vesas. She checked herself immediately. So therefore, if it's immediate, then she's believed. But if she waited, then she's no longer believed. Tana Rabbanon, the rabbis taught, Namenes Chaya Leimer Zeh Kayin v'Zeh Levi. A midwife who's delivering multiple babies in the same center is believed to say this one's a Kayin, this one's a Levi, Zeh Nosim v'Zeh Mamzer. The lineage of each one, the Medvarim, when is this true? Shalei Karala Shem Error, when there's no confusion. Al Karala Shem Error ain't an emenes. But if there's sort of a confusion, whose child is who, so then she's not believed. In English, basically, if you put your kid in a nursery, that doesn't mean that maybe you got switched in the nursery. It doesn't work that way. So the Gemara says, "Erodamai." What exactly is this confusion? Ilem erchad. There is a single witness that says that there was a confusion. You can't sort of sow doubt if there's less than two witnesses. El erotrei. It must be that two people are saying that they saw kids were switched, infants were switched. Another possibility is that there was only the confusion of one person. Typically, we say that it requires two people to create a doubt. Two people being suspicious whether somebody is actually the son of a grusha would make the person into a suffix grusha. But one person would not be sufficient. The Gemara is considering maybe that's only the case when there's a cheskes kashrus. So we presume the person to be kosher, the woman, let's say, to be kosher, not to be a divorcee. And now one person wants to claim she's a divorcee. We don't believe him. But in a scenario where they've never had a presumptive state of being kosher, i.e., they were just born, so therefore a single witness is able to sort of stir the pot and say, well, maybe the children were switched in the nursery. Okay, a few similar examples. Neman bal mekach loimer lozeh macharti lozeh ein macharti lozeh loy macharti. Let me change that. Yeah. Okay, a seller is believed to say, I've sold it to this guy and not to that guy. When is this true? When he still has the item in his store. But if the item is not in his hands, he is not believed. So the Gemara asks the obvious question: who paid for it? Right? The next is Who bought the items? The Gemara says, both of them gave money. And each of them says, each of them claims, I gave the money willingly. The other guy, you just dumped the money on him. He didn't want to take it from you. But we don't know which is which, so therefore, as long as the item's in his hand, he's trusted to give it to the true buyer. Similarly, so they came to court. The judge wrote out a court order, and then they gave the court order to the petitioners, and the petitioners ripped up the court order. So now we don't exactly know what it was. Can the judge say this is what I said? So Allah says yeah. He could. They're standing in front of him. But if they're not standing in front of him, he's not believed. In other words, once they leave, they both rip it up and forget what happens. He's not believed to say what he ruled. There's an obvious problem here. What's the problem? Why exactly did he rule in one way? Let's say he said one guy is obligated to pay and the other guy's not obligated. Mm-hmm. Well, why did he obligate one guy? Presumably there was a reason for that. Why does that reason not stay? So in other words, if you relitigate the case, you come to the same conclusion. You'd hope that in any decent judicial system, right, that things are reproducible. Not just if he relitigates the case, but sort of if any judge or jury relitigates the case, you'd get to the same conclusion. It's supposed to be reproducible. So Gemara says, first, let's see let's see what the document says. The Gemara says, it's ripped up. So go ahead and relitigate the case, and let's see what happens. Presumably the same. So the Gemara says, we spoke about Shuda Daini a couple of times before, specifically most notably in Ksubis. Shuda Daini is a ruling that is sort of not necessarily based on hard facts. So, for example, there were two people in town. One's name was Tuvia, and one's name was Rav Tuvia, and he was friendly with both guys. And then the guy wrote in his will, "I'm giving all my assets to Tuvia," and we don't know which Tuvia he gave it to. So the Gemara says, question: what we do shoot according to one opinion at least? We do shoot the daini. What does that mean? Shoot daini is a very loose. They sort of investigate and try to figure out which one was closer to him. But that's a very loose thing. It's not exactly a hard and fast ruling. It may not be reproducible. So therefore, you couldn't necessarily relitigate it.
So if the loser tears up the document,
well, presumably they both get a copy for that reason. They both have to be very upset about it. Amar of Nachman. Rav Nachman says, Shloishin Emonim al habachar. There were 3 people that are trusted to say that a child is a bachar. Elohein. These are those that are believed. Chaya, the midwife, like we saw before. Ava v'imai, the father and the mother. Chaya, the midwife. La'alter. The midwife is believed immediately. Once she sort of finishes delivering the children, then she's no longer believed. Imai, the mother, kol shiva, she's believed for the first 7 days, where the child is sort of, suckling and attached to her completely, and she's trusted to say which one is the bechar. Aviv, but the father is la'olam, forever. Okay, Tanya, we learned. Yakir, Yakirenu Lacherim. That means that the Torah basically tells the father, remember who the Bechor is. In other words, the Torah effectively is giving power to the father to say, this person is the Bechor. Mikana Rabbi Yehudah, from here Rabbi Yehudah says, Neman Adam Loimar, Zebeni Bechor. A father is believed to say this child is a Bechor. Similarly, Kashem Sheneman Loimar, Zebeni Bechor, Kach Neman Loimar, Zeben Grusha, Zeben Chalutza. Just like he's believed to say the child is a Bechor, he's also believed to say the child is of non-kosher conception. In other words, the child is a chol. The Chachamim, I remember, the rabbis say, Ein Eneman, he is not believed. He's only believed to say which child is a Bechor. He's not believed to say this child is of questionable progeny. It's an interesting story. Moshe Feinstein was once being Masada Kiddushin, and the mother basically whispers in his ear some sort of confession that the child is a mamzer, and he shouldn't do the wedding. He's at the wedding. At the wedding. The mother whispers into Moshe's ear that she confesses that the child is a mamzer, and he shouldn't do the wedding.
Oh, okay.
So Moshe says you're not believed, and he continued. I wasn't impressed with the story. Anyway, allegedly at the end, this sort of there was some sort of vested interest the mother had over there, and she didn't like the girl or something, so she made up a story. Anyway, but yeah, the mother's not believed. Abishal, the greatness of Moshe was like he just dismissed it casually and just continued going. Abishal Ikar Shtuki Beduki. Abishal would call a Shtuki a Beduki. My Beduki. What does a Beduki mean? A Shtuki again is a woman who gives birth, but we don't know who the father was. It might have been a mamzer. We check the mother and find out whether or not, in other words, Abishal basically says a Shtuki really is a Beduki. It means you could check him out. How do you check him out? You ask the mother, who were you sleeping with at the time? If I'm Eris and she says the kosher nevalti, the child is kosher because my relationship, which was a non-marital relationship, obviously she was single. That means the child is kosher. Nemenes, she's believed. Which opinion is this like? This is like the opinion of Rabbi Gamliel. The Tanya we learned first parak in Ksubis, end of the first parak. The Tanya we learned Taisim Muberas. They found a single woman pregnant. They said, "Mati how exactly did you become pregnant?" So she says to them, "Amar lahem meish plani v'kainu," from this person, and he's a kayan. Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Eliezer say she's believed the child is kosher. Rabbi Yeshua the child is not kosher. The child is a suffix mamzer. We don't believe her. Amar Yehudah, Amar Shmuel, and Yehudah says the name of Shmuel. Halacha Rabbi Gamliel. Halacha follows Rabbi Gamliel. That we believe the child. I'm sorry, we believe the mother. The child is kosher. So this seems to be a repetition of what Rabbi Gamliel says. The Gemara says it's not a repetition. Why? There's two different questions. One to say that the woman herself is kosher. That's the statement of Rabbi Gamliel. In other words, when we have a single girl and she's expecting, so they ask her, who are you with? And she says she was with a kosher person, not a non-Jew, let's say. Okay, now that means accordingly she's still eligible to marry a Kayan, even though we know for certainty that she had an affair.
No.
But as long as the affair wasn't with someone of questionable lineage, she's still eligible to marry a Kayan. Abishal is saying not only is she believed to say that she's eligible to marry a Kayan, but her daughter is also eligible to marry a Kayan. We believe her to justify the lineage of her daughter. Okay. So okay, so this makes sense if Rabbi Gamliel's statement was exclusively with regard to her. Rabbi Gamliel said that she's believed only for herself, but not for her daughter. So Abishal says, no, she's believed for herself and for her daughter. For herself, meaning that she's eligible to marry a Kayan, and for her daughter, meaning that her daughter is eligible to marry a Kayan, and doesn't have the title of a Shtuki. Okay, but according to the opinion that says that Gamliel, it said she's kosher, said the daughter is also kosher. In other words, both her and her daughter are eligible to marry a kohen. So what's Abishal coming to tell us? That Rabbi Gamliel didn't say. Gamliel effectively said the same thing as Abishal. Both Abishal and Gamliel are saying that every shtuki is a beduki. You could check him out. How do you check him out? You ask the mother, who is this child from? And effectively they say the same thing. So Gemara says the Abishal adifim midram Gamliel. Abishal is saying a bigger chiddush. The imi hasam havamina hasam derav ksherin etzla. V'heichad derav psulam etzla ema light tzricha. Rabbi Gamliel could have been talking about a scenario where most of the potential mates of hers would have been kosher. She lives in a religious area, and obviously somebody's not following religion too tightly. Which is always going to happen. Which is always going to happen. And
couldn't help himself.
Yeah, and. But the point is that presumably whichever man it was, but presumably he's kosher. Whereas Abishal is saying she lived in the middle of a downtown district of a city, and she's still believed to say that the person who she had an affair with is was kosher as well. Amar Rava says halach Abishal. The halacha follows the opinion of Abishal. In other words, a woman's believed to identify the father of her child, even in a position where most of the potential suitors would have been non-Jews, and she identifies the child as the son of a Jew. Okay, Mishnah: Kol hasurin lava v'kahal mutarin lava zebezeh. Okay. This is I guess a pretty difficult Gemara. At least I think so. Not an easy time preparing it. Okay, let's just read the first line of the Mishnah slowly, because this is the crux of the Gemara. Kol ha'asurin lov b'kahal, whoever cannot enter the congregation, mutarim lov zebezeh. They're all allowed to intermarry amongst each other. So you think, for example, a mamzer not eligible to enter the congregation, so is an edomi, right?
Right.
So they can intermarry. An edomi and a mamzer can get married to each other.
Yeah, what does that mean for their kids? It's like moms are forever and ever and ever.
So
What goes on here?
The general rule is if there's Kiddushin and no sin, which is most of these scenarios, then the child goes based on the father.
Mhm.
The exception to that is mamzer. The child, either parent can make the child a mamzer. Either parent can make the child a mamzer. So we go by the father.
So I'm just trying to understand. We're talking like they never get it. There's no way out of the status. Moms can marry each other, what have you, but it's moms are forever as far as the eye can
Right.
see.
Mamzer never has an end to status. That's
Right?
correct. Okay. Rabbi Yehudah says it's prohibited. Okay, the Gemara is not exactly sure what we're referring to. Which group of people are we referring to when we say that these people are prohibited to enter the congregation but permitted to intermarry? And Rabbi Yehudah says they're prohibited. What exactly that means, that's sort of the discussion of the Gemara. But what's clear is what Rabbi Yehudah is saying is not what Rabbi Eliezer is saying. So let's read Rabbi Eliezer pretty closely. Rabbi Eliezer disagrees with Rabbi Yehudah. What does he say? Vadon v'vadon mutter. A mamzer who wants to marry a mayavi, that's permitted. However, vadon b'sfeikan usfeikan b'vadon usfeikan b'sfeikan osar. A mamzer cannot marry a shtuki. A mamzer is a certain mamzer, a shtuki is a suffix mamzer. Same thing with an asufin. Similarly, the kusim. Who are the kusim? Kusim are a group of non-Jews that Sancheir brought into Israel from a foreign country. These are pagan people. There were lions that came and threatened them, and they, out of fear, they converted. Their conversion is sort of questionable, and therefore they're considered as Suffolk Jews. Maybe they're Jewish, maybe they're not. A kusi can't marry a mamzer. Kusi. Not only that, a kusi can't even marry a shtuki, because different type of Suffolk.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So therefore, so a certainty with a doubt with a certainty, or even two different types of uncertainties also. They're all prohibited. And what are these uncertainties? Shtuki, asufi, v'kusi. A shtuki, and asufi, and a kusi are three different types of uncertainties. They cannot intermarry. because we don't know, maybe a mamzer is marrying a suffix mamzer. Shtuki can't marry another shtuki either. According to the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. Okay. 6:30. I hope we can finish this tomorrow, because if not, it's going to take a lot of time to have tomorrow. Okay, and I hope I don't get stuck over it either. Okay, Michael Asurim Lava B'Kahal. The first category in the Mishnah, someone who's prohibited, a group of people, a specific group that's prohibited to enter the congregation, can intermarry amongst all the groups of people prohibited to enter. What does this refer to? If this refers to the regular categories, a mamzer, an asan, shtuki, and a sufi. We already learned like this in the Mishnah, in the first Mishnah of Asar Yochsin, right? The Mishnah identifies all the 10 different types of Yochsin, of lineages, and the Mishnah says that a mamzer, an asan, shtuki, and a sufi can't enter the congregation, umutarim lavi zebazeh, but they could marry each other. Mamzer and shtuki v'asufi, umutarim lavi zebazeh. So we've already known this. Why is the Mishnah repeating itself? V'su, and moreover, Rabbi Yehudah Oiser. Rabbi Yehudah says it's prohibited. Well, what's prohibited? Ahai. If he means to say that a mamzer can't marry a shtuki, well, that's the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, right? And Rabbi Yehudah does not go as far as Rabbi Eliezer. Hamidatani say for Rabbi Eliezer, mutar vadam b'sveikon also. Bechlal Rabbi Yehudah loy svirlei. Evidently, Rabbi Yehudah disagrees with that. Rabbi Yehudah says that a mamzer is permitted to marry a shtuki. A mamzer is a vadai. He's certainly a mamzer. A shtuki is a suffix. Still permitted to get married. The chitem, and if you'll say Rabbi Yehudah Eiser, what exactly does Rabbi Yehudah prohibit? Agera b'mamzeres. Rabbi Yehudah, according to his own opinion, prohibits a convert from marrying a mamzeres. So the Gemara says, "Midi ger b'mamzeres k'tani." The Mishnah doesn't explain that. The Mishnah doesn't say a ger is permitted to marry a mamzer. Yehudah disagrees. One second. It says it is sort of a general rule and doesn't give a specific example of a convert marrying a mamzeres. Okay, Amr of Yehudah. So Yehudah says, Hachikamar. Okay, so the Gemara's resolution is as follows. Rabbi Yehudah is talking about a convert marrying a mamzeres. But how is he referring to it? He's referring to it as follows. When the Mishnah gives a general statement, people who are prohibited to marry Kayin, what are we referring to? Referring to an interest. Okay, so let's go back for a second. We have this is true with regard to a convert or with regard to a freed slave, freed maidservant, to be more precise. Like we pointed out many times, a maidservant has no real restrictions on promiscuity. She can sort of marry any other slave. And that means that once she's sort of now given the promiscuity of indentured servants, once a woman was sort of the age that her sexual contact is considered carnal in a legal sense, so then she's considered a zayna, and she can't marry Kain. Why? Because she is somebody who slept with a slave, or at least might have, because there's very few restrictions. So therefore, a convert cannot marry Kain because she's a presumptive zayna. So there's really two separate questions. One question is a convert. There's two reasons why a convert might not be able to marry Kain. One is because she's a presumptive Zayna, so therefore can't marry Kain. Why? Because she slept with somebody who does not have Kiddushin. That would be either another slave or another non-Jew, there's nothing wrong with that at the time, but that is the fact. a second potential reason is, let's say she was below the age at which point of which her intimate contact is carnal. So now the question becomes, well, okay, is a convert an inherently problematic lineage for a kohen to marry? Because she's not a zayna, because she could not have had a carnal act. We're together? So now as follows. Mine, what we're referring to, we're talking about a Gyeris, a convert who converted, she converted before the age of 3. So any sexual contact was not carnal. And therefore, according to the rabbis, she's still prohibited to a kohen. 1 second. Yeah, according to the rabbis, she's prohibited to a kohen. Why? Because she comes from the lineage of a convert, and not because of zayna, because she converted before the age of 3. However, she is permitted to marry any other type of invalid lineage. She can, right? A convert can marry a mamzer, and Rabbi Yehudah says no, convert can't marry a mamzer. So we together here on the second version of Rabbi Yehudah. Okay. The convert who converted, the girl who converted before the age of 3. Would you like Rav Shimon Yochai? And not like the opinion of Rav Shimon Yochai. Rav Shimon Yochai says that a convert is not an invalid lineage. A convert is really a convertess is a zayna. Therefore, she converted before the age of 3. Then she is therefore not a zayna and therefore permitted to marry a kohen. Right? If you remember, we saw yesterday, the day before, we saw that one opinion in his Rava, right? He told all the converts they can marry Kohanim. So they were all proud of him, and they gave him silk garments, right? And then he said, "You can marry Mamzerim." They got all upset at him. Okay, that's like Rav Shimon. Rav Yehudah disagrees. Rav Yehudah says a convert cannot marry a Kohen. So the Gemara says, "Mutar and love is ebezah." So the rabbis say all the converts are permitted to marry whoever they want. Rabbi Yehudah disagrees, and Rabbi Yehudah says that a convert cannot marry a mamzer. Okay, so the Gemara asks, why can't we be referring to a scenario where she's above the age of 3, and according to and this way would fit with Rav Shimon? In other words, the rabbis say that a convert cannot marry a kohen, but they could marry each other, and Rabbi Yehudah says that they can't marry each other either. A convert cannot marry a mamzer. So the Gemara says, "Imkei mitzida tavro." It immediately breaks. Why? El time to bashal shan v'yemechad. Hapchusim bashal shan v'yemechad. The mutaris love b'kal kahuna. Asur love is ebezeh. Because then the contrapositive is incorrect. Let's explain this. What's the contrapositive of the Mishnah? The Mishnah says whoever is prohibited to enter the congregation is permitted to marry each other. But if they are permitted to enter the congregation, then they would be prohibited from marrying mamzer, nasin, etc. But that's not true. Why? Because what is it referring to? If it's referring to a convert above the age of 3, right? Convert above the age of 3 can't enter the congregation. The congregation meaning she can't marry a kohen. But they could marry each other. She could marry a mamzer. Now, what happens if she's under the age of 3? Then she could marry a kohen. That should mean that she's prohibited to marry a mamzer. But that's not true. She can marry either a kohen or a mamzer. You together?
Yeah. Okay.
Our 1 second. I'll talk. They should be prohibited to marry kohen. The Gemara says no. Just give me a second. According to the way we just explained, according to Rav Shimon, she would a girl under the age of 3 would be permitted to marry a kohen and be permitted to marry a mamzer. So the contrapositive of the Mishnah is not correct. So therefore, we must say the Mishnah is referring to a girl under the age of 3, a little less than a quarter of the way down. And we're in the middle of the first one line is mutaris. So toward the end of the line, it's a klolahu. The first one line is next line is ha'asurim. Uklolahu. Is this a general rule? The kol ha'asurim love it kahuna mutar and love is ebazet. Whoever can't marry kayin is permitted to marry the rest of the psulim, right? Which would be mamzer, shtuki, nasim, asufi. You have these three categories, four categories. An almana, a grusha, halala, or a zaina. An almana potentially specifically to a kain gadol. The asur in love is bekaha kahuna. Vasur in love is ebazet. They can't marry kain, and they can't marry mamzer either. A halala is a Jew, the son or daughter of Aaron, right? But cannot marry kain, but also can't marry a mamzer. So the rule is not true either. So he made this big rule, but the rule, we said the rule over here, what does it mean you're prohibited to enter the congregation? It means you're prohibited to marry kain. Whoever can't marry kain can marry each other. Mamzer, nas, and shtuki. It's not true. There are people that can't marry a kain, but can't marry mamzer either. An example, halala. Halala she has a lineage of being the daughter of Aaron, but not a kain, not a kohenet. V'su, and moreover, the contrapositive is never true either. Ha-mutter osir. Okay, in other words, what's the contrapositive? Anyone who's permitted to marry kain can't marry one of this bad mixture, right? Mamzer, nos, and shtuki. But that's not true. A ger, while it's true that a gieres, a convertess, cannot marry kain, but a convert can marry a kohenet. So he actually is eligible to marry into the family of Kohanim. And he's also eligible to marry a mamzer. So it's not true either. So we have another reason why we want to establish the Mishnah is referring to a scenario of a girl under the age of 3 who is not eligible to marry a kain and therefore eligible to intermarry amongst this messy group. There's multiple problems with that. First of all, the general rule of not being able to marry a kain is not true. And second of all, the contrapositive isn't true either, because a ger can marry a kohenet, but still can marry a mamzer. Okay. El Omer of Nasim Bar Hoshia. So Nasim Bar Hoshia says, Hachikama. This is what we're referring to. Kol shekayin also Lisa esbitoi. 1 second. One second. Okay. El Omer Nasim Bar Hoshia. So Nasim Bar Hoshia has another resolution. Hachikama. Kol shekayin also Lisa esbitoi. Okay, so he has a variation of the previous Gemara. If a kain can marry your daughter, is prohibited to marry your daughter, then you're permitted to intermarry. And Rabbi Yehudah disagrees. And what's it referring to? It's basically referring to a convert. In other words, the rabbis say that a convert can marry a mamzer, and Rabbi Yehudah says a convert can't marry a mamzer. But he has a little bit of a variation of this. He says if a kain can marry your daughter, what's that scenario? Umayne ger shenasa gieres. Can a kohen marry your daughter? So what's it referring to? It's referring to a convert and a convertess that got married, and their child cannot marry a kohen. Like the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer and Yaakov, Mutar and Levi Zebazah, they are permitted to marry. So in other words, a convert is permitted to marry basically a mamzer. And Rabbi Yehudah says a convert can't marry a mamzer. So Gemara says, is this general rule true that whoever a kain can marry their daughter, whoever's daughter is prohibited to marry a kohen is permitted to marry a mamzer? Let's analyze that if that's true. Harei chol shenasa bas Yisrael. You have a male chol that marries a Jewish girl, right? There is no sin there. They're allowed to marry each other. The male is a chol. The child's lineage is son of Aaron, but not a kohen. Call him a chol, right? He is not allowed. The kohen is not allowed to marry this person's daughter because the child is chol, chalala. But he is not allowed to marry a mamzer either. He's Jew. He's regular lineage. In his lineage of Yisrael. So So the Gemara says loikash. It's not difficult. Rabbi Dovid Yehudah, like the opinion of Rabbi Dovid Yehudah. Rabbi Dovid Yehudah would say that where a chol marries a kosher girl, in other words, a Yisrael, as opposed to a chalala, the child is eligible to marry a kohen. It's only when a chol marries a chalala. Okay, so that's exactly the Gemara's question. Okay, fine. So a chol that marries a Yisraelis can't. A chol that marries Yisraelis, the daughters could marry a kohen, and therefore they can't marry mom. So that makes sense. Okay. However, chol shenas chalala, the kohen also lisa bitay. Kohen can't marry their daughter. But they're also prohibited to marry mamzer. Vesu, and moreover, hamutar aser. The contrapositive doesn't make any sense. Somebody whose daughter is permitted to marry Kayan is prohibited to marry mamzer. 1 second. A convert that marries a regular Jewish woman, a Kayan is allowed to marry their daughter, but that daughter is also allowed to marry a mamzer. Why? Because her lineage is her father, which is a ger, a convert, and therefore she's permitted to marry a mamzer. So it doesn't make that explanation isn't true either. Okay. No choice but to stop here, all right? Okay. Guess I'll try to be on time tomorrow. It's gonna take at least 5 minutes to just review all this.
I got to
Okay.
go over some of these comments there. Maybe I'll do that. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Great day.